Drones. Drones are cool. We've talked about drones before, but we haven't really talked about how to take them down. Turns out it's kind of hard, so let's talk about it. Your standard soldier basically has 3 ways to reliably take out a drone. You can jam it, land a lucky shot with some small arms, or shoot it down with a missile that is orders of magnitude more expensive than the drone itself. There have been some development in using a drone to take out another drone, but it's not quite there yet, seeing as we are still in the jousting stage. Enter drone blowing up technique number 4, and the reason you clicked on this video, shooting down a UAS with a sick self-propelled anti-air gun that never got the World War III showcasing it deserved. I want to see how far along we actually got with this technology now that it's coming back, and to see if I can convince the army to bring back the M6 linebacker. A guy can dream. Just a few months after the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Germany pledged 52 refurbished Flugabwehr Cannon and Flugabwehr Cannon Panzer Gepard, aka the Flakpanzer Gepard. Now, we haven't really seen this type of vehicle in a hot minute. And this is actually the first combat deployment that this weapon system ever saw. Just to very quickly sum up the background of a self-propelled anti-air gun like this, armies needed to take down these, so they built these. Some research points were put into the necessary technologies, and we ended up with these. But then, instead of this, we got this, so we really didn't need these anymore. So now they're mothballed. Or are they? They are. If you haven't noticed by now, I have a little bit of a kink for Cold War era technology that didn't survive the GWAT, so I'm going to be talking about this class of vehicle and how I think we need to be bringing them back ASAP regardless of what the NDAA budget is. And we'll start with the Gepard. Developed in West Germany in the 1960s to replace the M42 Duster, which I had never heard of until the making of this video, the ones currently shooting down DJIs in Ukraine are the Gepard 1A2s. At its most basic level, this is what happens when you take a Leopard 1 hull, slap a radar dish on top, and weld 2 Oerlikon GDF 35mm cannons next to it. One critical feature was found with these is that you have to ensure that the gunner and the commander get along, because look at how close they have to sit next to each other, and it looks so cozy. The cannons are dual feed, and typically have about 320 rounds loaded per gun of rounds intended strictly for anti-air use. These are going to be your typical high explosive incendiary rounds. The second load of ammo is more for self-defense, and each gun will have about 20 Sabo rounds. A 35mm AP DFS round is more than enough to punch through anything that isn't the frontal armor of a T-72, so that is not an insignificant capability right there. Each gun has a max fire rate of 550 rounds per minute, so 1100 RPMs in total. That gives you about 35 seconds of going fully cyclic, or how the Germans describe it, unlimited mode, which is not the worst name, but I feel like it needs some workshopping. The only downside is that it allegedly takes an hour and a half to reload once you run dry, so just keep that in mind. If you've ever wondered why guns designed to hit planes, whether it be on actual planes or the ones sitting pointing up at the sky, have such high fire rates, it's because planes, stay with me now, are generally quite fast. So your window to engage them is pretty small, so you need as many chances of actually hitting it as possible. To help with this, the Gepards use these projectile velocity sensors that detect the individual velocities of each round in order to compensate when firing, which is pretty cool if you ask me. But you're not, because I'm making this video before you had the chance to ask me, so if you were to ask me, I would say, yeah, that's pretty cool. You can leave your retroactive questions down in the comment section. Now, any AA gun these days is only as good as its radar, and the Gepard Simon's MPDR-12 S-band can find targets up to 15 clicks away. Despite being first built in 1986, this radar has no problem tracking even small DJI drones. According to Twitter user Der Gepard Commandant, they used to lock onto seagulls for fun, and that's what they get for going after my Cheetos. Watching animals do weird things through advanced sensors is a time-honored tradition if this was your first time hearing about it. Now, the US has never been that good when it comes to self-propelled anti-aircraft guns. We had the VADS for a while, which was supposed to be replaced by the Sergeant York, but that turned out to be a pile of garbage, so we kept the VATS until 1994. And since then, we've never really had anything that was anti-air that wasn't just a glorified Stinger launcher. We do have these things, which are actually really good at taking out drones, but these have yet to be placed on any platform that can actually move. Russia has generally kept up with this kind of weapon system, with the current platform being the 2K22 Tunguska, which on paper actually outclasses the Gepard in several ways. These use X-band radars over S-band, which are better for tracking small, fast-moving targets like missiles or drones, but they don't do as well if the weather stops cooperating. These kinds of weapon systems fell out of favor because, generally speaking, missiles are just better at taking out aerial targets to begin with. The countries that have kept these things around for as long as they have generally do so because they can buy them from other countries for cheap, or they don't have the dinero to throw down on an actual missile air defense platform. And that's the important thing. These things are cheap. relatively speaking. At least the ammo is. One round out of any of these Cold War relics is more than enough to take down any drone thrown at it. Drones are highly maneuverable and can rapidly change directions in ways that will blow your mind, but even at top speed, they're not going to be outrunning a bullet in the same way a jet is. Most of them use hulls that are just modified versions of other vehicles, meaning it's easy to get parts for, which also helps keep costs down. Compared to a heat-seeking missile, a handful of 35mm rounds is so cheap it might as well be free. Shooting down a drone with a man-pad or other ground-based air defense is all fine and dandy, that is until you run out of bright shiny missiles that cost the same as an entire economy of some countries, and then all the bad guys have to do is launch another 100 Amazon Prime specials with a mortar strapped to it at you. We're seeing more and more reports that even the most advanced air defense systems in the world are pretty easily defeated if you just overwhelm it with too many targets, using just a ton of cheap drones and munitions, rather than a handful of the latest and greatest pieces of missile tech. The Zerg rush of modern warfare, if you will. Drones fit that scenario perfectly, but the thing is, compared to your typical rocket or missile, they are moving significantly slower. One of the biggest reasons you would want to have a missile system with a long range is that it gives you enough time to intercept something that's moving at like Mach fuck. But even the best UAS platform out there was nowhere close to that. So while these self-propelled guns won't be able to track them as quickly as other systems, they have more than enough time to engage them once they enter their bubble. Even though these kinds of platforms can't actively engage more than one target at once, they can rapidly transition between targets without taking a breather. And they have more than enough ammo to realistically engage targets for a hot minute. With that said though, getting ammo for these things has actually proven just to be a little difficult. A big portion of the rounds fired from the Gepards specifically were manufactured by Switzerland. Switzerland, being in the land of neutrality, forbade both Germany and Denmark from sending over any ammunition to Ukraine that they had manufactured, which unfortunately was the majority of it. Norway managed to stand up some domestic manufacturing, and after a tiny hiccup in building rounds that straight up did not fit in the gun, they managed to ship out about 50,000 rounds by August of 2022. Rheinmetall followed suit and built an entire manufacturing center just for these 35mm rounds, and delivered 30,000 of them by the end of 2023. Doing some quick math, that gives us 1,050,000 total millimeters of ammunition. That could be a lot, that could be not a lot. I don't know, because I live my life as if the metric system doesn't even exist. Gepards since the invasion have been reported to have been used to great effect against the relatively crude drones of Russia. Not only have they been littering the ground with DJI parts, they've been wiping the skies of Iranian Shahed loitering munitions, and even a few KH-101 cruise missiles on top of that, something that they weren't really even designed to engage in the first place. Summing up their success is the Royal United Services Institute, saying, in general, gun systems are preferred over missiles while being less politically sensitive as they only have limited effective range. And that last part's actually huge. Giving air and missile defense systems to foreign countries is almost as politically shaky as giving them missiles designed to attack things. Patriots, for example, have always carried a political stickiness, and that's why Ukraine didn't get them until the war had already been raging for over a year already. Now, as exciting as I am to see these things coming back from the dead, are they here to stay, or are we just kind of using them as a stopgap method until something else better comes along? As good as these things are at taking out drones, there are some downsides. The youngest Gepard in active service right now is well over 40 years old, and keeping a vehicle as complex as this in action is not an easy task when one hasn't been built since your mom was still hot back in the 80s. The radar and computer systems inside them are firmly in the good enough category, but they won't be forever. And upgrading these or replacing them entirely with something new would bring some insane costs, which kind of defeats the whole purpose of these things to begin with. That said, if there's one thing militaries around the world are doing right now, it's throwing money at ways to bring down drones. I wish they would throw money at the problem of me crying in the shower every night, but apparently that's not an issue of national security yet. So I guess I have no choice but to make it an issue. For example, back in August of 2023, the United States sent over the Vampire system, a palletized AA launcher designed to take out loitering munitions. They're a bit more expensive to fire per shot, but cost way less to maintain and transport around, so it's kind of a give and take. The US has been showing off their M-SHORADs recently, and the XM914 30mm chain gun comes equipped with the ability to track and engage aerial targets. This is basically the cousin of the cannon found on Apaches, but the issue is that it maxes out at 200 rounds per minute, which is less than half the speed of a single one on the Gepards while firing a smaller round. This kind of layout is similar to what replaced the Gepard for Germany, the Oerlikon 30, but this single cannon fires 1,200 rounds per minute, which is faster than both of the guns on the Gepard combined. In fact, the slowest firing rate that this thing can shoot at is the fastest rate of fire for the M-SHORAD. So is the future a bunch of these new self-propelled guns driving around shooting at stuff? Well, for the foreseeable future it is, considering how much money they just spent into it. But nay. Nay, I say it will be cooler, and it will be cooler because of lasers. We've been trying to get lasers to work for weapons for a hot minute now, and using them to intercept things in the sky has always been the top of the priority list, especially with missiles. We never really got it quite right though, but with drones it's a whole different story. See, one reason it's hard to take out a missile with a laser a lot of the time is because they're big, and it's a lot of material to cut through at the exact right spot in order to terminate it. Drones, on the other hand, are built as light as possible, and if you take out any one part of the drone, there's a good chance you take the whole thing out at once. Israel's already been slapping lasers onto things for air defense with the Iron Beam, and the United States is already testing out how to strap lasers onto strikers for mobile systems. But getting them mobile, that's the hard part. Lasers that are able to burn through a moving drone require a lot of organic infrastructure like power and cooling to keep them in the fight. That's pretty easy if you just slap it somewhere and plug it into the local power grid, but not as easy to do if you're a moving vehicle that has its own power requirements like radar tracking, radios, turrets. You get the idea. One way around this that's being developed is using AI object detection. Instead of needing to power an energy-hungry radar all the time, you can either pass that job off to another platform or only use it for the initial detection portion, and then use whatever power you generate from the vehicle for the laser only. I would like to propose a way to combine the Cold War aesthetics with this modern laser system, but the creation of a Gatling laser tank. This serves basically no purpose and actually just makes the whole system worse in every single way, but it would look really cool. And what's the point of winning a war if you'd look lame while you do it? Why even fight? Anyway, thank you for watching. Subscribe, leave a comment, and I will see you in the next one.